Daf Yomi, Tractate Zevachim, page 103. Top of the page, starting a new Mishnah. Kol shelo zacha mizbeach b'tzara lo zachu kohanim be'ora shne'emar olat ish ola she'alta le'ish. The Mishnah says, in the case of any burnt offering for which the altar did not acquire its flesh, for example, if it was disqualified prior to the sprinkling of its blood, the priests did not acquire its hide, as it is stated with regard to the burnt offering. And the priest that sacrifices a man's burnt offering, the priest shall have to himself the hide of the burnt offering that he has sacrificed. Leviticus 7 verse 8. Indicating that the priest acquires only the hide of a burnt offering that satisfied the obligation of a man. Ola shenishcheta shelo lishma, af al pi shelo alta lebaalim, o echa lekohanim, echa lo ilasish ve'echa lo ilasish o yiraseh lekohanim. Nevertheless, in a case of a burnt offering that was slaughtered not for its sake, but for the sake of another offering, although it did not satisfy the obligation of the owner, its hide goes to the priests. In addition, although the verse states a man's burnt offering, in the case of both the burnt offering of a man and the burnt offering of a woman, their hides go to the priests. Ois kadoshim kalim bebailim ois kodesh kadoshim lakohanim kal v'chomer uma im oila shelo zachu v'sara zachu v'oira kodesh kadoshim zachu v'sara din sheyes k'voiro ein mizbeach yochiach she'ein lo or b'chol makom. The hides of offerings of lesser sanctity belong to the owners. The hides of offerings of the most sacred order belong to the priests. The right of priests to hides of offerings of the most sacred order is derived via an a fortiori inference, which means a kal v'chomer. If for a burnt offering, for which the priests do not require its flesh, as it is burned in its entirety, they acquire its hide, then for other offerings of the most sacred order for which the priests acquire its flesh, is it not right that they should acquire its hide? And there is no room to contend that the altar will prove that this is not a valid inference, as it acquires the flesh of a burnt offering, but not its hide, since it does not have the right to the hide of an offering in any place. That's the Mishnah, and now we proceed to the Talmud. The Talmud says, Tanu Abanan, the sages taught in Ibraisa, Oilas Ish, Prat lo ilach kodesh tiv Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda omer, Prat lo ilas keirim. The sages taught in Braita the phrase, a man's burnt offering, in the verse mentioned above, serves to exclude the burnt offering of consecrated property, meaning that the priests do not acquire the hides of such offerings. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, says the phrase serves to exclude the burnt offering of converts. My prat lo ilas ekdesh amar b'chi Bar Yosef prat lo ilah haba min mutarois. The Gemara clarifies what does Rabbi Yehuda mean when he says that the phrase serves to exclude the burnt offering of consecrated property. Rabbi Bar Yosef says he means it serves to exclude a burnt offering that comes from property that was left over. For example, if an animal consecrated as a guilt offering remains alive after its owner has achieved atonement by sacrificing another animal, the owner must wait until it acquires a blemish and then sell it. The proceeds are used to purchase a communal gift offering, which is sacrificed when there are no other offerings to be burnt on the altar. See Torah 20b, because it is a communal offering. It is not considered a man's burnt offering, and the priests therefore have no right to the hide. The Gemara asks, this works out well according to the one who says, leftover consecrated property goes toward communal gift offerings, but according to the one who says leftover consecrated property goes toward an individual's gift offering, what can be said? As this is a man's burnt offering, the priests should have a right to the hides. As Rava said, Oila ha'ola. Ola rishona achanami ha'ola ola rishona. The Gemara answers according to that opinion. The halacha is as Rava says. The verse states, and the priest shall kindle wood on it every morning, and he shall lay the burnt offering in order upon it. Leviticus 6 verse 5. The verse states the burnt offering with the definite article to teach that the daily burnt offering is the first burnt offering sacrificed each day in the temple. Here too the verse states the priest shall have to himself the hide of the burnt offering which he was offered, to teach that the priest acquires the hide of a first burnt offering, meaning an animal that was initially designated as a burnt offering, but not of a burnt offering purchased from proceeds left over from another offering. Rabbi Aivo Amar Rabbi Yanai Pra lematpis oila lebedek habayis. Rabbi Aivo says that Rabbi Yanai says Rabbi Yehuda's statement can be interpreted differently. The phrase, a man's burnt offering, serves to exclude a case of one who consecrates a burnt offering for temple maintenance. Since the owner seeks to shift his ownership to the temple, the priests have no right to its hides. The more comments, it is not necessary to teach this halacha according to the one who says that consecration for temple maintenance applies by Torah law to offerings already consecrated to the altar, as the animal in fact ceases to belong to the individual and the priests clearly have to claim its hide. Rather, even according to the one who says that it does not apply by Torah law because the offering is already consecrated for the altar, this matter applies only to the meat, but as for the hide, the consecration for temple maintenance applies and nullifies the priest's claim to it. The Gemara returns to explanation of Rabbi Chia in the comments, and so says Rabbi Nachman that Rabbi Bar Avu says the phrase "a man's burnt offering" serves to exclude a burnt offering that comes from property that was left over. Amar le Rav Hamnuna Rav Nachman, come on, Rabbi Yehuda Had Be Titania Shish Nidava Laila Habab B'Tayros Shelo Yehu Kohanim Zakin Ba'ira Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Hamnuna said to Rav Nachman, in accordance with whose statement is your opinion? It is in accordance with the statement of the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. But didn't Rabbi Yehuda retract his statement, as it is taught in a Braita? The Mishnah in Tractate Shkalim 6.5 states that the temple has 6 collection boxes shaped like horns for communal gift offerings, these funds would go toward burnt offerings that came from money that was left over. For example, if someone dedicated money to purchasing an offering, and after his purchase some of the sum remained, he would put it in these boxes. The halacha is that the priests have no right to the hide of such an offering. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. Amar lo Rabbi Nechemia ve'amri Rabbi Shimon im ken bitalta midrasho shel Yehoyada HaKohen Titania ze midrash darash Yehoyada HaKohen Asham hu Asham Hashem Kol sheba mishum chatas mishum Asham Yilokach ba'oilois abaso l'shem oira lakohanim. Rabbi Nechemia said to Rabbi Yehuda, and some say that Rabbi Shimon said to him, if so, you have nullified the interpretation of Yehoyada the priest, as it is taught in the Mishnah, Shkalim 6, that Yehoyada the priest taught this interpretation. The verse states, it is a guilt offering. He is certainly guilty before the Lord. Leviticus 5:19. The phrase before the Lord teaches that if any money comes on account of a sin offering or on account of a guilt offering, meaning it is left over after their purchase, burnt offerings must be purchased with it, and their flesh must be burned on the altar to the Lord, but its hide shall go to the priests. Rabbi Yehuda did not respond, indicating that he conceded that the hides of such offerings go to the priests. Okay. All right. Take a little break. Be right back. Continuing. We're with the words Amar le Ela Mar Mai Mokim La. Amar le Mokim Na le B'Makdish Nichasav. Okay. Rav Nachman said to Rav Hamnuna, but how does the master interpret the phrase, a man's burnt offering, as meaning? What's the meaning of that? Rav Hamnuna said to him, I interpret it as referring to one who consecrates all his property, including animals fit for burnt offerings. If these animals are later sacrificed as burnt offerings, the priests do not acquire the hides, since the offerings are consecrated property. Rabbi Yehoshua Ditznan Makdish Nichasav Vayu Bahen Behemos Haroyos Legabe Mizbeach Zevachim Unekevois Rabbi Eliezer Omer Zevachim Yimachu Letzoche Oilois Kevos Yimachu Letzoche Zevche Shlamim Udemehem Yiplu Imshar Nechosim Lebedek HaBayis. And this is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua, as we learned in the Mishnah in Shkalim 4:7. If one consecrates his property without specifying the purpose, generally speaking, it goes toward temple maintenance. But if among it were animals fit to be sacrificed on the altar, neither male nor female, then Rabbi Eliezer says animals that are fit for offerings must be sacrificed. Therefore, the male animals shall be sold for the purpose of burnt offerings to those who need to bring such offerings, and the female animals, which cannot be brought as burnt offerings, shall be sold for the purpose of peace offerings to those who need to bring such offerings. And because they were consecrated for the temple maintenance, their proceeds shall be allocated with the rest of the person's property for temple maintenance. Rabbi Yehoshua Omer, Zevachim Atzum Yikarvu, Oilois, when it came to Zevachim Tzarech Shlamim, V'yavi, B'dimehem Oilois, Ushal Nechosim Yiplu Leved Gabayis. Now Yehoshua says, the donor intended that all animals should be sacrificed and brought as burnt offerings, and the rest of his property be given for temple maintenance. Therefore the males shall be sacrificed themselves as burnt offerings, and the females shall be sold for the purpose of being sacrificed as peace offerings, and he shall bring burnt offerings with their proceeds. And the rest of his property shall be allocated for temple maintenance. Afilu leRabbi Yehoshua de'amar Adam cholek hekdeisho hanimili baso aval o tepais. Rabbi Hamnuna explains, and even according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua, who says that a person divides his consecrated property as he rules, that the animals are themselves sacrificed while the other property is given for temple maintenance. This statement applies specifically to the flesh, which is fit to be burnt on the altar. But as for the hide, which is not, the fund for the temple maintenance acquires it from the outset, and the priests therefore have no right to it. This is the halacha of Rabbi Yehuda. This is the halacha that Rabbi Yehuda derives from the phrase "a man's burnt offering." Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Prat le'oilas geirim, le'oilas garim, geirim. Amar le Rav Simai bar Chilkai, Rabbi Atu ger, lavishu, Amar le Prat le'ger shemesvin lo yoshim. The Brisa states, Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, says the phrase "a man's burnt offering" serves to exclude the burnt offering of converts. The priests do not acquire the hides of such offerings. Rabbi Simai bar Chilkai said to Ravina, "Is that to say that a convert is not included in the category of a man?" Ravina said to him, Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, meant that the verse serves to exclude the burnt offering of a convert who died and has no heirs. The offering has no power, and therefore the priests do not acquire its hide. Okay. Tanu Hamadan oilas ish, Eli ela oilas ish, oilas geirim nashim b'avadi minayin, tamanama oilas o ha'oila riba. Okay, the sages taught in Brisa, the verse states, and the priest that offers a man's burnt offering, the priest shall have the priest shall have to himself the hide of the burnt offering that he has sacrificed. Leviticus 7, verse 8. From this, I have derived the halacha only with regard to a man's burnt offering, meaning that of a born Jewish male. But from where is the same derived with regard to a burnt offering of converts, of women, of Canaanite slaves? The verse states the hide of the burnt offering, and it's thereby included these as well. V'im kein ma tamen loyma oilas ish, oila she'orsa ish, prat lenish chata chutz lizman chutz limkoma. V'shelo yehu hakohanim zakain be'oirha. And if so, why must the verse state a man's burnt offering? It serves to teach that the priests acquire the hide only of a burnt offering that satisfies the obligation of a man, meaning to exclude a burnt offering that was slaughtered with the intention of consuming it beyond its designated time or outside its designated area, and was therefore thereby disqualified. The verse teaches that the priests have no right to the hide of such an offering. Yachol shani mar beshin yishchat shelo lishma hoil. One might have thought that I include a burnt offering that was not slaughtered for its own sake, but for the sake of another offering. since it does not satisfy the obligation of the owner. Now we turn to 103b, top of the page. Lo yuhu kohanim zakin b'ayda tamud lomar, or ha'ulam yikol makom. And we're on top of 103b. I might have thought that the priests have no right to its hide. Therefore, the verse states the hide of the burnt offering to teach that in any case where the offering is not disqualified, the priests acquire its hide, even if it did not satisfy the owner's obligation. We'll stop here.